Welcome back to the Football Fitness Federation podcast. This is episode 193, and I'm delighted to welcome onto the podcast today, Paudie Roche. Paudie, how are you?
Good. Thank you for having me. Pleasure being on.
No problem, mate. It's absolutely, the pleasure is all mine. It's going to be great. We've got some cool stuff to cover. So I'm sure a lot of the listeners have followed your journey, have an idea on what you've been up to recently. But if there's anyone that's been living under a rock anywhere that doesn't, do you want to give a little bit of a background on yourself to start with?
Yeah, I'm sure most people are probably tired of listening now to this, but I'm from a small little town called Cahir, County Tipperary in Ireland. I'm currently employed at Arsenal. I will be here 9 seasons on the 4th of July. I came over initially to work with the under-9s, under-16s program in the academy. And then after 4 seasons, moved to the under-18s and under-23s program in the academy, under which time I worked with Des Ryan when he took me on board, and we formed a department together with Perry Short, Noel Carroll, Ivan Mukandi, Sam Wilson, lots of top practitioners that are currently there now, Ian Jones, Dominic May. And obviously Des moved on last season, and the world-renowned Tony Strudwick, who's got a incredible experience from Man United and now at Wales, took over as the head of department. So before that, I was working with Irish Rugby. I was based in the Munster province, south of Ireland, where I spent 6 seasons working with Irish Rugby, 4 seasons full-time, 2 seasons as a casual worker in the summer, running the summer academy programs. And before that, I worked in various universities and institutions around the south of Ireland. Majority of my experience in recent years has been in football and men's football. Excitingly, after 9 seasons, I'm moving on to a new role. The Arsenal women's team have approached me to come on board as the physical performance lead, which I will start in the coming season, the first week of July, which is exciting to see the growth and development of that game and how it's really leaning on, experienced practitioners like myself now to add value to their program. They already have a very, very good program there, and they're just asking for some experienced eyes and hands to come in and drive it on even further. So that's a really exciting challenge after a natural probably end to my time in the academy. So yeah, still in the same club, still developing players, which is what I do, and that's my keen interest. And that's a little snapshot of my career to date.
Perfect. Now, I wanted to tap into some of your experiences with academy, but also looking forward to first team as well in the new role, and talking about some of the key skills that you think are required. So initially, coaches that are going to be working with academy players, and by academy, obviously, we're covering quite a large age group. What do you think are some of the standout skills of a practitioner to be thriving in that academy environment?
Obviously, the big thing first of all is having a knowledge and understanding of development. I think that's key to all. That's the first prerequisite to working with academy players, is you have to have a thorough and deep knowledge and understanding of how a player, a boy or a girl, physically develops, but also holistically develops, mentally, physically, tactically, technically, looking at all the corners of development. On top of that, then the big one for me is patience and longevity, because you're not seeing the fruits of your labor immediately. It takes time for you to see the work you put in your program. You'll see improvements in a player every week. You might see them grow every month as they mature, but actually to see the fruits of your labor from a performance standpoint, you might not see that for quite a while. When a player, reaches maturation, at the end of their maturation, you've got through all the awkwardness of growing and all the things that come with that growth, and you then see them become the athlete that you thought they would become at the end of a long period of time. So yeah, longevity and patience is a big one. That's a big skill set to have, that, you don't, it's not the top end of the game where you have to win on a Saturday. Yes, winning is part of development, but you're looking at the longer holistic approach, and to have the ability to zoom out and be patient is hugely important for me. And a commitment to your program. A lot of people see academy as a stepping stone to a first team job, or to a different kind of role as a head of a department or something like I have been looking at. But a lot of people don't spend much time in the academy. I was only talking to Perry Stewart, my colleague in Arsenal, last week about this, and we could probably only name a handful of people who've spent more than 5, 6, 7 years in an academy structure. All my experience previous to this was in the Munster Rugby Academy and the Irish National Academy. Yes, I've tasted a season with the men's first team at Munster and the men's first team at Irish Rugby, but it was really the development end of things that really excited me. So that's where you have to be. Longevity and patience is the big one, but a commitment to the program that you might not see results quickly. You might have to regress your program quite a lot, because as these boys and girls develop, their body changes rapidly sometimes, and movements that were lovely and clean 2 months ago might have changed rapidly when they've come back from a period of time off and they've grown. So it's having the ability to also to not just plan and progress, but I always talk about this as regression. Like, can you regress your exercises, your program, to meet the demands of their new growing body? So they're the big skills for me.
I've heard you speak about before, like trusting the process, and that's more from probably a parent point of view. But I suppose that also relates to coaches as well, doesn't it? Like, we've got these processes in place for a reason. We've got to trust them.
100%. Yeah, 100%. You have to, as I said, you don't see the fruits of your labor quickly. So you have to trust that the program you've put in place, the plan you've put in place is safe and appropriate for that player at that time of their development, but also that it is going to take time, and you have to trust your experience and your instinct that, well, yeah, you will benefit from following this program. And that's the big thing, yeah, with academy as well, as having the patience and also having the ability to connect with that young person and their parents, because the parents play a huge influence in their growth and maturation and their development, because they're the ones feeding them, they're the ones bringing them to training. You know, they're the ones who probably want them to develop quicker than they can develop, because sometimes they see, oh, he or she's going to be a professional footballer. So it's having that patience and understanding with parents as well. And big thing for us at Arsenal was education of parents and having that really, really good relationship with the parents. So probably in my 9 seasons, I would have sat in 200-300 player reviews where the parent is sitting across from me, and then just, you know, building that trust with them, and them understanding and having the trust that you are there for the benefit of their young player, their young boy or girl, and that the process is and the program is at a very high level. So they have to trust that, but you have to trust that yourself first.
Brilliant. And then just back onto the original question in terms of the skills required. If we're looking now more at a first team environment, do you think that's similar? How do they differ? Like, what are some key skills you think going into that environment?
That's an interesting question, because for me, so when you look at LTAD, so long-term athletic development, is often, you know, it straight away brands you with youth development for some reason. Whereas actually, if you look at the original models for Bally and Hamilton and a lot of those models, they talk about longevity of an athletic career across your time as a professional player or a professional athlete. So all players can develop. They can always develop a physical quality. Now, how they develop that is different as you get older, obviously. So if you're a seasoned international England captain and you've played probably, you know, 200 games for Arsenal and 50 games for your country, your program is going to look different than the young player who's just come into the squad, who's played twice for his country and has made 3 appearances in the Premier League. But for me, the biggest thing is adaptability as a coach at the top end, because you're adapting to changes in fixtures, you're adapting to injuries, you're adapting to, you know, a player that's only with you for 6 months. You don't have that longevity. So your processes have to be really tight. And the skills you need there are, I think, a real detailed coaching eye, and real detailed eye on data, particularly monitoring and workload data that you're gathering, because you're dealing with the top end now. And even the slightest change for the wrong reason or right reason can lead to an injury, or it can lead to, you know, a lack of performance, or a team not finishing strong in the last 5 minutes of the game. So that ability to adapt to different individuals, because you, as I said, you might only have a player who's come from Spain, who mightn't have a formal training program like you guys are running. Suddenly now, how do you get the most out of that player while not overloading that player or pushing a philosophy on them that doesn't suit their bodies at that period of time? So adaptability, and I think really acute detailed planning is essential at the top end.
And we've spoke about in a few episodes before about development versus performance, and going through that transition in terms of the importance, because obviously at first team level it's about the performance, and then academy more about development, but there's definitely a crossover there as well, isn't there? It isn't just to switch one off, switch the other on. There's definitely a crossover in the preparation. So what's your views on that, and how does that affect your practice?
100% there's a crossover. Like part of your development is learning to perform. And that's what you have to teach young players and young athletes is, yeah, you're thinking, my job at the academy was to develop players for our first team. So we had a remit in the department, in the academy, of one player every 2 years into the first team, because the Arsenal model, they want to have a self-sustaining club where they're not relying on spending huge amounts of money on top players, but also they have that player that has got the Arsenal DNA in them. So that's long term. So that in my brain, that focuses me differently. However, as that young player is growing, yes, if we don't win on a Saturday, hopefully I won't get the sack if my under 16s or 17s or 18s don't win on a Saturday. However, part of that winning and part of closing out a game is part of development. So the balance is hard to get, particularly if you've got, and this again comes with education, coaching staff, and the other multidisciplinary team around that player. They have to learn to perform. Even if they're doing a speed session, you want them to race each other. You want a maximum effort. If they're in the gym, you want them to try and lift heavier or safely lift heavier or quickly every day, that they're performing. So you do need to, we use the term PUP, performance under pressure. So we do a lot of work on that with our psychologists in recent years on, what is it to perform under pressure, whether that's, a young man who plays in front of his parents on a Saturday in a normal setting on a league, but suddenly now we're in the Youth Cup and you're away to Colchester in their stadium and you've got 400 fans screaming at you who, don't want you to win. So how do you deal with that? And that comes with challenging the players on and off the pitch. And it is, yes, performance is not the end goal of academy development, but it is important. They need to learn to perform.
And then there's the other side of it, isn't there? In that first team environment, like you've already mentioned, that the development is still really important too, isn't it? Like you're not stopping the development by stepping into that first team level.
No, and I've seen it. I've seen some top players at Arsenal who are first team season players. I've seen their speed scores going up. I've seen their jump scores going up, physical performance markers. They can always develop. And that's our job really in the academy structure, is to give the players the tools, whether that's movement competencies or abilities, that when they get to a first team environment, they're ready to work. They have a full physical literacy suitable for their development, suitable for their bodies, but now they're ready to work. And that's been a real pride of mine actually in my time at the academy, is to see the players that we have in the first team now, and that they transition smoothly into the first team environment. Yes, they won't be at the level straight away. However, they were coping with training, they were performing in training when asked to, and that was a real pride of mine to see that young player, get an opportunity and cope physically. And obviously then when they train regularly with the first team, they get that development, which is developing them to perform on Saturday. So it crosses over, yeah.
Because that can be really tough sometimes, can't it? Because when you're in that academy setting, you see these players going through the age groups and you're confident on, right, they're getting the right support, they seem in the right place. And then obviously at first team level, it can either go one way or the other, can't it? Like you're just not really sure until they get to that level. So it is a really important thing, isn't it? So that's what's even more refreshing, I suppose, when, and we're going to hopefully reference a few of the players in shortly, but when you see some of these stories of these players doing so well.
Yeah, it's great to see. And obviously the few that make it, the reason the rewards are so high in the Premier League financially or status-wise is because the demands are so high and so few make it, unfortunately. And it gives me great pride to see those players that go into our first team, but also I have a lot of pride in the ones who don't make it at Arsenal but they make it at other clubs. I have one boy who was completely written off at under 18 level, and now he's playing professionally, earning a good living and enjoying playing football in the first division. So it's this club isn't for everyone, that's often the case. But to see them go on and have careers, that's good as well. It's exciting to see. And actually sometimes I have more pride in them. I have more pride in some of the less talented ones who just had to fight and to get a career, and they've had a career, and that's really exciting to see as well, because there's teaching them how to perform and as they develop. So
And that's, again, just referencing what we were talking about before, isn't it? The performance, not just in terms of performance on the pitch, but everything you're training around that in terms of their mindset going into a monitoring session, a testing session, a gym session. They're things that are going to carry on, aren't they, regardless of what level they play?
Well, exactly. And that's what you're trying to do. Like, I see myself as more than a fitness coach, strength and conditioning coach. Like, you spend so much time with these young men that a lot of the time you're almost like a big brother or an uncle to some of them, because, you know, you get to know them really well. You've seen them. Like, it was really interesting to, it was actually really emotional when I said goodbye to the lads on the last day. I had 6 in that squad this season. I've had since they were 10. So it was lovely to see that these now have become professional players in the club. They've signed their first pro contracts. They're now going into the 23s, getting ready for hopefully a first team journey. So yeah, you're developing all their skills as you develop your own. And sometimes it mightn't be a gym exercise that makes it better. It might be you just saying, okay, you look really tired today. Let's back off you today and give you a rest, because school is on top of you, life is on top of you. You know, the demands of academy football are very high. Training demands are very high. Sometimes the best thing to do is take them out of it and give them a little bit of time off. So that's a real, and again, that's another skill for academy conditioning coach, where, you know, some days you don't chase numbers. So it's having that experience and that eye to know when to chase it and when not to chase it is key as well.
I wanted to get your perspective on managing individuals, because again, it's something we reference quite a lot, and obviously something you've talked about there with the number of players that are hopefully going to be coming through the system. But obviously we're talking about all individuals, talking about individual personalities, individual talent, strengths, weaknesses, and all the rest of it. What are some of your takeaways, you think, from the time with the academy on managing each individual and making sure that they get the most out of the process?
I suppose the first thing to have, I suppose, is a good toolbox of information in your programming. So have a wide variety of exercises. I probably made a mistake early on in my career that, you know, I came from a weightlifting background, a powerlifting background. And I felt like everyone needs to squat, everyone needs to clean, everyone needs to snatch. And I probably didn't take enough time or to look at it and go, hold on, you know, some structures aren't built for a back squat. Some structures aren't built for a front squat, etc. So having that broad range of try and give the players as much physical tools as you can and as many movement patterns as you can. But the big thing for me with the program is knowing when to load and not load. So for instance, if they're struggling with lower body mobility, stability as they grow, well, just back off on the load there, concentrate more on stability, mobility, you know, unilateral exercises instead of bilateral exercises, so that you're giving them new skills to try and, you know, control this new movement that they can't do, or give them new skills to control this extra weight they've put on as they grow. So that's a big thing for me, is having the ability to progress and regress your exercises, having a broad range of exercises. And my program would be general in the nutshell of, you know, the structure of how it's laid out. However, the individual differences are the loading patterns and the exercise selection. Some of my athletes, the majority of my athletes, are African Caribbean descent. So some of them have short torsos, long femurs. As I said, they're not built for back squat. Some can do it, but okay, what am I going to get from this? So what I'm trying to achieve, I'm trying to develop lower body power, lower body strength, or body power, upper body strength. So then selecting the right exercise for them and appropriately loading is key. And judging that load comes from not reps in reserve with a gym aware or a calculated 3RM. It comes from your coaching eye every day, where you're going, okay, you can push it on a little bit today. How are you feeling? Feel good? Yeah. Well, I've asked you to do 5 reps of this. Now let's add 5 kilos because that looks like it's moving really well. Or you look tired today. Let's back off that. So it's constant micro management of their training loads. The general pitch-based fitness and speed stuff, obviously that's planned and periodized with the coaches. But again, knowing the individual on the day as well, and based on how they monitor it or based on how they're feeling. And often that's a conversation. It mightn't often be formal monitoring or planning. But, you know, backing off on their training loads, because I still have it with some of my 18s men. Some of their knees are sore because they're still growing. Okay, I can't chase too much high-speed running today, or accelerations, decelerations in a small side of game is going to flare this up. You know, he's going to be off the pitch sore for a couple of days. How about we just back off on him a little bit? He comes out of that part of the program, but, you know, he can do the rest of the exercises in the rest of the session. So it's having those conversations with the coaches and the technical staff. And and having the education and I think respect for each other that you can have those conversations, because a lot of coaches want to win on Saturday at every age group, and we have to have an agreed approach that it's a longer term project here. Is it better that Ben is off for 6 days and he misses the game on Saturday, or let's manage his training now, keep him on the grass where he's happy, and just let's manage that training load. So management and planning of training load is vital, and often that can be daily. It can be a daily conversation. It doesn't have to be planned weeks in advance. It's often day to day, reactive to how that boy is feeling on the day, because muscle, bone, and connective tissue of a growing athlete are very unpredictable. They might have been fine yesterday and they come in sore today because they're growing. So that for me is the key thing is conversations and challenging of each other in an MDT.
I suppose on that as well, you've talked about developing the toolbox for a player or an athlete, but that's also where we tap into the toolbox of the coach as well, isn't it? Not only recognizing the fact that something needs adapting or changing, but then, like you referenced, having the powerlifting and weightlifting background and not having that rigid program where it suits everyone, but knowing when to use it at the right time. And that's where it's important for the coach to develop that toolbox, isn't it? So any young coaches listening, that's where it's really important to have that real adaptability in your programming. It can be switched on the fly, isn't it?
Absolutely. And it's a question I often get asked, like, what's my philosophy, and young coaches will ask me that, coaches that I mentor, how do I develop my philosophy? I was like, your philosophy will change. The principles of what you do are underpinned by science and underpinned by your education. However, a lot of the methods and the philosophy is underpinned with your experience. And I've made a huge amount of mistakes growing up in my career where, I thought a one size fits all program for power will work there, for speed will work there. That's not the case. Particularly when you're dealing with large groups, it has to be very, very, you have to be very adaptable in how you plan and program. And that comes with experience, but also I'm not one to jump on what I have learned in 20 years working with some of the best coaches, with some of the best athletes, is the basics have to be right. That never changes. I see a lot of young coaches now, and I hear conversations around my own environment and through my work with the UKSCA and stuff, that like I speak to a lot of coaches and they're hanging on the next method. They're looking at the next method that's come out, velocity-based training or triphasic training, or isometrics is the big one at the moment. I know a particular individual who does nothing but isometrics in the program. So, we're limiting ourselves to methods there. And your program shouldn't be based on methods. It should be based on sound principles and understanding of what that player needs and what tools does that fit him best or fit her best. And that's a mistake I see a lot of young coaches making. The latest paper comes out, Paudie, we need to be doing more isometrics. We're not doing enough isometrics. Well, why? Tell me why. Don't chase a thing, for me, is very important. I see it again, and I'm ranting now, sorry. I see it again with, early career physiotherapists, early career practitioners in strength and conditioning that, we want to minimize hamstring injuries this year. Yes, we want to do that. So let's chase isometrics. Let's chase distal proxial loading on that hamstring. And well, first of all, have we hamstring problems? Then let's see how we fix it before you go chasing something that maybe not a problem. And I've seen that happen. I've seen that happen a few times in different environments where they've chased something and it's become a problem because they've overloaded an area that wasn't a problem. So it's we got 2 hamstrings this year. It's a spike in hamstrings. Okay, well, the whole squad don't need to do hamstring prevention. Maybe it's, let's assess the players and see who's weak, who's dysfunctional, who's maybe asymmetrical. So just a little bit of tidbits of advice there. Get the basics right, have a very balanced program. And then the methods, you have to have different methods because you need variety as well. I think the big thing for me with programming is variety for the young player. You need consistent exercises in there that, if you want to get better at split leg squats, you have to do split leg squats. However, along the way, when you've had a player for 47 weeks, a bit of variety, a bit of fun thrown in there is so important. Not being regimented into your program that I have to do my job now or my boss is going to go, he's not developing the players. No, sometimes I have freestyle sessions a lot. And if you look in, it looks lazy, on a Monday after a load of games, 25 weeks, 30 weeks into the season, I go, okay, boys, you freestyle your upper body session today. I've given you sessions for 25 weeks. Let me see what you want to do yourself now, and give them a little bit of autonomy and guided learning. So it looks lazy. It probably looks unstructured. I know sometimes certainly the technical coaches don't like it because they haven't got their formal plan going through their exercises, but you give them a little bit of understanding, and before you know it, actually, they end up putting together decent sessions. So we forget these young athletes are sponges, and they hang on a lot of what you say sometimes when you don't even realize it. So
I can't remember the quote, but there's one in there somewhere about learning a topic. The best way to do it is to obviously teach it back to someone, isn't it? And that's exactly what you're doing now with the athletes, isn't it? It's a little test for them. It's seeing what's been absorbed, seeing what's been learned, and then getting them to apply it to themselves. There's no better way of learning, to be honest, is there?
there's not, and again, that's having, I suppose, the confidence in your processes that you can do that. As I said, it doesn't look very professional sometimes. I've often gone out to a pitch and I've gone, okay, who's the captain last Saturday? You're the captain last Saturday. Okay, you're taking the warm up today. Set it up. I'll give you 10 minutes. You take my physical warm up that we normally do. And before you know it, they're actually giving you back a lot of what you've given them when you don't think they're listening sometimes, or you think they're just going through the motions. But from a coaching perspective, it probably looks like, oh, Paudie's taking the foot off the gas here. He's on a download week. But no, it's actually, sometimes you're dictating the program to them for so long. Like, as I said, if I've had some players for 9 years, 47 weeks a year, I think it's about 180 warm-ups a year I do. Sometimes along the way, you just need to trust your process, step back and let them do it. And I've seen some really interesting exercises and warm-ups being done in that respect. But never a problem. No one gets injured. It's always guided learning.
I mean, there's only so many exercises that we're going to fit in that time, isn't there? So it's basically just reassuring a lot of things that you've been over time and time again, isn't it? Paudie, I wanted to just get your views on and your experiences really on a few players that have obviously come into the limelight recently. Your Sakas and Smith Rowes that have ended up in the Arsenal first team. That's just probably just to name a couple that there's been a lot along the way. In terms of that process, what was your experience working with them through those age groups? Like, was it something where, like we talked about before, you could predict that they're going to go on, they're going to be first team players? I can see it because I can see this, that, and the other. Or was it a case of, like you said, trusting the process? And yes, they are talented, but it could go one way or the other. Like, what was your experiences?
Well, that's first of all, they're two great names to bring up, and I feel blessed that I've had the opportunity to work with those boys. And I consider myself very close to them, and I'm proud to see where they are now, because they're not only were they good players and good athletes, they're I'm not just saying it, two wonderful young men. I'm not sure if you ever see any of them interviewed after games. They're very humble. I would say Smith Rowe in particular is actually quite shy. He still is quite shy and reserved. Of course, early on you could see they were good players. To say they stood out would be, maybe an overstatement, because they were in a very good group of very good players as they grew up. But they were always good players. They looked like good players. Now, no one has a crystal ball, and no one can say, it's easy for me to turn around and say, oh yeah, I knew when he was 10 he was going to make it. No one can tell you that, because I've seen so many quality players come through the system and fall out of the system, whether that's lack of opportunity, lack of drive, injuries, etc. So to say they were going to make it and I knew they were going to make it, that would be telling a lie. They were very good players. They were always good athletes. They were quite reserved, actually. They just cracked on and done their work. They were always good to have in the program. As I said, Emile was quite shy. Bukayo was quite quiet. But actually, what I loved about them as young players, as they were growing up, they love running. They love running with the ball. They're very positive players. You can see that in their style now. They just want to go forward with the ball, and they can play in any position. And early on, that was the case. They played in loads of positions. And, it was exciting to see them grow up and to become the players they are. And people forget, people that have followed Bukayo in particular, he didn't play a lot of under-18 football. Like, he wasn't starting youth cup games. He wasn't, but we do remember him, Liverpool away. We're 2-1 down in the youth cup, and Stevie Gerrard was taking Liverpool at the time, and Bukayo came on and won us the game. But he didn't start that game. Same in Dallas. We played Man United in the Dallas Cup in 4-5 years ago, and it was a semi-final of the tournament, and we're 2-0 down, and we brought Bukayo on, because we needed legs, and he won us the game. Well, he drew the game. We won on penalties, but when he got his opportunities, he took them, and so did Emile. And Emile was wonderful to watch. Emile played a lot of the U Cup that year. Actually, was involved with the first team quite a bit training wise, and Yeah, I think what's happened, they've been successful, one, because they've been talented. Two, they're very good athletes. And in today's game, the Premier League is a running game, and the two of them can run. But more than that, they work hard. They sincerely work really hard, and they're diligent, they're respectful, and very humble boys. And it's no shock that when they've got their opportunity, that they have been successful. That's no shock. Did I know they'd make it at 10, 11, 12? You would think they would, but you don't know at that age. So we have to be very careful when we're making those calls. But yeah, it was a pleasure working with them. They were incredible to see. And now we've got Eddie Nketiah in there, Florian Balogun, again, two good athletes. Like they followed a program of mine through my time from 9s to 23s, but I can't ever claim that I made this Mitt Rowe or Bukayo Saka. The genetics and the qualities their parents gave them, that's the key to their development, really. They're very humble parents, and Bukayo's parents in particular said, if he's good enough, we want to stay at the club. We want to trust the club. When loads of clubs were throwing money at him as a young player, no, we enjoyed it here. He enjoys the process here. He enjoys the program here. If he's good enough and he makes it at Arsenal, then the rewards will come. And yeah, incredible to see them where they're at now, and hopefully they have very, very bright careers ahead.
And knowing their strengths at a young age, Paudie, as well. So seeing them play and understanding like what their real strengths are as a player. How much does that affect the way you speak to them, like the language you use around training, and then also how you adapt their training as well? Because there's going to be obviously strengths, but there's also going to be things that need to be worked on. And how does that then adapt, or how does that affect even your approach that you take individually with each player like that?
So the big thing for the players like them growing up is it was clear visibly that they had strength, power, speed. You want to enhance that. You want to make that a super strength. So we always do from 9 to 23s. We do benchmark testing for the Premier League. So we have all that information. So where they are in a strength, power, speed scenario, formally and informally, because you're getting it through your GPS monitoring or you're getting it through your workload monitoring. But with them, you have to trust the process, and you have to be careful with young players like that. So if you look at Bukayo running, Bukayo is very backside dominant mechanics. It doesn't look clean sometimes when he runs. However, he's very efficient, very powerful. Am I going to change his mechanics too much and try and get that second quicker? Or am I going to let him progress through our speed exercises, get a bit better and see how he moves? And as it turns out, I didn't try and change too much in the running mechanics side of thing. We just give him a little taste of running activities. But we do maintain their speed and develop their speed by constantly having speed sessions and racing young players. Young players love to race at every age. So that's very important that you challenge that. With Bukayo and Emile, I was always asking him, can you get a little bit more? Emile, as a boy growing up, was quite slight. Wasn't into heavy gym that much. Not that we were pushing heavy gym, but gradually, we got through the exercise and understood the program and trusted the program. And my challenge to both of them, as it is with every player, was, can you get a little bit better every week? Are you enjoying the exercises? That's a big thing we forget as practitioners. Sometimes you have to ask the players, do you like doing this exercise? Yes or no? And it's like medicine, isn't it? It's like sometimes you have to take something you don't want to because it's good for you. However, there has to be a little bit of buy-in as well, or else the program gets lost. So from that standpoint, he was just finding out what their strengths are, trying to bring up their weaknesses. As Emile grew, he was getting quite stiff. Hamstrings, calves were so he'd done a lot of mobility. Bukayo didn't have any major growing problems, but then you have to be careful because your talented players then are playing up age groups. They're playing for England every opportunity. And that was what was lovely about Emile and Bukayo as well. They just want to play football. I remember them as under 18s. If we'd asked Emile to go and play 16s, he would. They just want to play football. With that, then you need to be careful that you're not overworking them and that the demands are not too high. So, give them the opportunity to play up when they can, so that they can get stretched. It's about stretching the players physically and technically who are good, but also protecting them that you're not overstretching them. And that's a real balancing act.
Brilliant. I want to look forward, Paudie, now as well, because going into the role with Arsenal Women, first team environment. So looking ahead into this role, what's your mindset going in terms of the approach that you're going to take?
So when I was approached to come in, it was probably this time last season it started, and the women's game has always fascinated me, because in the 9 years I've been at Arsenal, I've seen it grow at our club, but also across the league. And our women's team is probably, I think they're full time 5 years, so quite young in structure, quite early in the structure. Now I'm walking into a Champions League environment, which is exciting, where now you're looking at performance. But the conversations I've had with my employers, is that, you know, they want development as well. And we're going to be looking right down towards the academy structure as well, because the gap is getting higher, not only in the Women's Super League now, but it's getting higher within the club for academy girls to step into the first team. So it's really, my first job will be to maximize performance. Let's look at our injury history. Let's look at our availability. How can we make it better? But with that, my mindset is that I have to trust my process, that the experience I have from the academy development side of things can be dropped in to a structure where, you know, we do need to win on Saturday now, or at 25 weeks in, we need availability because you got 3 games on the bounce in the week. So it's different mindset, but at the forefront of this is development, because we spoke about it very early on, long-term athletic development. That encompasses the development of a player till the end of their career. So we can always chase development. And looking in, a lot of the women in the team might not have a formalized strength and conditioning program for very long, if they're new to the club or they've just joined the club, or because of the nature of the game growing. So it'll be very interesting to, you know, get some nuts and bolts, solid basic skills in there. And I'm sure that'll push on performance anyway. But again, now we're at the top end. So my mindset will be really based on acute monitoring of the workloads and how we get those workloads in there while getting development and maximizing performance. So that acute eye on detail that I spoke about earlier on is going to have to come to the forefront.
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? Because like you said, with teams like that are maybe 5 years into a full-time program, and looking over at the men's game as well, even the teams that have had sports science programs in for the longest time that we know of, it's still not that long, isn't it? So yeah, it's still that development has to be the focus, doesn't it? Even at the first team level, because there's still a lot of things to work on.
100%. And that's you know, already I can see bits and pieces that the women need to do. They've got 2 great practitioners working with them already, Fran and Owen, and but what they, you know, they need just I think a bit of a sounding board. And my experience is, you know, I'm at this 20 years now and made lots of mistakes, and I think I'll learn a huge deal from them, because they put together a very good program for these women. But it's just probably fine tuning in a little bit now and making sure that, you know, how can I add you know, a different set of eyes on how they look, how they move, how they, you know, how they change direction, etc. And is there something that I can help see that they might not see, because they're in the program for so long? But yeah, really exciting to see the development. I'm sure that getting my basics right and tidying up a few structural things will really help their performance this season. So it's yeah, exciting to be part of that, and it's exciting as a practitioner to be asked to come on board from such a prestigious team and club, because a lot of we spoke about it earlier, a lot of coaches in academy or in the women's game see it as kind of a platform to launch into the men's game, first team men's game. But actually, I think my skill set suits academy and suits the women's game better, because you know, I'll be hopefully have a bit of longevity there, and there's some very interesting athletes there that just need some fine tuning. So yeah, really exciting.
Yeah, it's interesting you say about the load monitoring as well, because obviously at first team level, we're looking at schedules, aren't we? We're looking at fixtures and the importance of those fixtures as well. And I mean, it's only today they've released the Premier League fixtures, and some of the schedules look pretty brutal. So a lot of practitioners out there, that has to be the priority initially, doesn't it? And then everything else can follow.
Big thing is availability. You know, if the girl isn't on the pitch, she's not happy, the coach is not happy. So for me, that falls in with the academy as well. And this is what I speak to the academy coaches a lot about this, to technical coaches. We want players on the grass. My job is to create better physical qualities in that player. But they're a football player. They need to be on the grass. If they're not on the grass, you've got a very unhappy person, coach and staff member, and player. So my goal is availability, and whatever that takes, that might be developing strength and power in this athlete, or it might be like if you've got we've got some of the best players in Europe in that team. We've got huge experience, and it might be just managing another player's load where she stays fresh and available. So it's that real micromanagement of acute training variables is going to be key. Yeah, but keeping them on the grass, that's the 100% priority. Because if they're not on the grass, they can't perform.
Yeah, brilliant. Paudie, this has been superb. I want to just move on to some of the quick fire questions that we wrap the podcast up with. First of all, being, who were some of the biggest influences on your career so far?
Well, I've been blessed to be around so many good practitioners, and I think the people I work with every day are my real influences. Obviously, Liam Hennessy, my mentor and friend for a long, long time. He was my boss at Irish Rugby. Des Ryan was my manager and coach developer at Irish Rugby, and then my line manager and friend and boss at Arsenal. And learned so much from those two about not only strength and conditioning. If anyone gets a chance to chat to Liam Hennessy or Des, they can talk for hours on the holistic development of a player or an athlete or things in sport. And I've got, I've been very lucky through my master's degree, my UKSA work, working with Ian Jeffries, learning from Dr. Greg Half, Sophia Nymphis, Jonas Dodu from Speed. I absorb information from everyone. Periodization, Bompa, never met him, but yeah, it's, there's so many influences. My early days in Munster Rugby, Aidan O'Connell, Fergal O'Callaghan, Mark McManus, like Tom Cummins, who was an international runner at the time. I've spent a lot of good time with a lot of people. And through my own training, I've worked with a lot of good coaches. Kevin Geary, who's now at Bristol Bears, he heads up the program there. Andy Murphy, who heads up the program at Connacht with the Academy. I've just been around really quality people. And just that's not name dropping there. I'm just so many people to be thankful for. Going into the women's game now, I'm delighted that I've become very good friends with Ivy Casagrande and Erica Souter in the States, and Lizzie Fluke, who works with the London Lionesses there. I'm learning so much from them about the women's game and women athletes. And so yeah, I've been blessed really. It's hard to pinpoint any one or two people, but yeah, been very, very lucky. And I think the people you work with day to day is the key one there, and I'm surrounded by some very good practitioners. So.
Yeah, I think the takeaway message from that is getting around those brilliant people, brilliant minds and names, isn't it? And that is only going to be a positive for you as a practitioner, isn't it? Some brilliant people in there. But the next one I always ask is, what would you say your biggest strength is as a practitioner?
Adaptability. Being able to change for a situation instantly. Excuse me. Whether that's this speed drill just isn't working. It's just not, the boys they're not on this today. Can I move a corner or pole or change the variables here to get a little bit more out of it? That boy, that girl isn't looking right today. Let's back off of them today, or let's push them today. Let's come off the plan. I think that's my biggest strength. My interpersonal skills maybe is probably people that know me best will probably say that I, they say you remember great coaches not from what they've done for you, but how you made them feel. And I think anyone that works with me, player or staff, like I exude energy and warmth around my program. I want it to be fun. Yeah, you're going to work hard when you're with me, but it has to be fun. It has to be engaging. Sometimes I'll have crosswords with you, but it's always from a good place. And I've often told the players I work with that if I'm not shouting at you, I've given up on you. And I haven't given up on too many. Patience. I have a lot of patience for development and for trusting the process. Yeah, adaptability and patience and interpersonal skills are huge for me. I don't care how good your program is if you can't deliver it, or if it can't be adapted, then it's not worth the paper it's written on. So.
Brilliant. A new one we've added in recently, which I think has gone down okay so far, is going back a few years now when you're first starting out before Arsenal. What would be your advice to Paudie back then?
Enjoy the process more. I got hung up on making sure my programs are perfect, making sure I was learning every day, which isn't a bad thing. But there was times when maybe I expected too much from those around me as well. Sometimes where I was like, "Come on, we're training hard today. Let's everyone take this seriously." And that softened a lot. That you have to trust that. I suppose trust myself. I would have said to myself, trust the process. Trust you know what you're doing. You've got a great relationship with your players. The program is working. Trust it. There was a lot of self-doubt when I was a younger coach, and I put a lot of time into my programming, making sure it was perfect. And often I probably got more results from doing less and doing it better. So I would have trust myself and enjoy it. And I'll say that to young coaches now. Actually, I spoke to Kevin Geary about this when, as we worked together and grew up together in our careers, and I often asked him, are you enjoying the process as he was climbing the ladder from first team rugby to international rugby to now head of a department? He goes, yeah, he does enjoy it. Yeah, you have to enjoy it because you put so much time and effort into your career. You have to enjoy it. And don't be in a hurry. I think we're all in a hurry. I get asked every day now, Paudie, what qualification did you do to work at Arsenal? What qualification did you do to work at Irish Rugby? I didn't. I had an opportunity. I was given an opportunity, but when I had the opportunity, I was ready. So people will often say I was lucky. I think the harder I worked, and the more I trusted myself, the luckier I got. So when an opportunity comes up, be ready. And it's not often a qualification, it's experience and knowing that you've made mistakes. I made a lot of mistakes, learned from the mistakes, and I was humble enough to realize that I made mistakes. You can't be pig-headed in this industry. You have to be able to change and adapt. So yeah, I hope that helps young coaches out there or early career coaches.
Brilliant. And then just final one, I always ask about your approach to CPD, continue learning. Like, how do you go about continually improving as a practitioner now?
A lot of my CPD in recent years would have been obviously through my work with the UKSCA, and I found that I applied to be on the board of directors 2 years ago, and I'm coming to the end of my 2 years. But on there, I've met some brilliant people. That's been my CPD for the last 2 years. Steve Barrett from Playermaker, they're one of the smartest people I know. Andy Boyd, who our chairman is, Scottish Rugby. Kevin Paxton's on there, Dan Cleather, obviously Chris Bishop, Rich Clark have just left. Rich Hunnix is on there. Like, we are surrounded in board meetings. I'm surrounded with amazing people who are all different. And this is the thing with CPD is I approach things, I suppose early on, my CPD would have been understand speed better, understand power better, understand monitoring better. Actually, when I came into the academy, it was understanding movement better. That was my real, because I was a strength, power, speed guy from obviously rugby, and you want me to get, I was very good at getting someone big and strong, but now hold on a minute, they don't need to be big and strong. They need to be strong, quick, and able to move. And they're growing rapidly. Yeah. So they were, that's how I approached my CPD then, understand movement, competency, function. In recent years, I'm surrounding myself, my CPD is sharing ideas and bouncing ideas off really good people. Whether that's in my office with Tony Strudwick and Dominic May or Ian Jones or Nav Singh, any of the people I work with, or it's day to day with old colleagues like Noel Carroll, for instance, a guy I worked with. He's now working in Formula One, and just chatting to him about the performance levels there and things. That's my CPD now. My CPD is learning from the best practitioners I can, and that might be a casual conversation. Formal CPD, yeah, I like to attend conferences when you can, etc., learn from everyone. But I'm more interested in now talking to people with experience and teach. Well, and that doesn't matter if it's a good experience or bad experience. You could be a young practitioner and have had great ideas. Let's chat. So that's how I approach it now. I'm surrounding myself with really interesting people. For instance, this year I want to learn a language. We have so many foreign players in our club, and we all expect them to speak English. And I'm going, okay, wouldn't it be really nice to be able to say hello, good morning in French, Spanish, Portuguese, Romanian? We've, and it means so much to those players. I know when I've tried to speak to players or say hello, we've got 2 Muslim players at the moment being able to speak a little bit of their language. And, I think it's really engaging. It shows that you're pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone. So I've gone on a rant there about CPD. For CPD for me at the moment is challenging myself and getting outside my comfort zone. And it mightn't be an S&C topic. We're asking our players and the staff we work with every day to step outside their comfort zone. So we must do the same. So watch this space. I hopefully will be fluent in French and Spanish by season 2023.
I was just about to ask, Paudie. I was going to say, which one are you going to go for? But you've just committed there, French and Spanish.
French and Spanish. French initially, because I'm actually trying to buy a little house in France.
Nice.
You know, it's just, I think it's very important to be able to think outside the box. I'm embarrassed I can barely speak English. So yeah, that's my CPD for the coming year. And obviously understanding the female athlete, that's obviously on the forefront of, as I keep saying, it's the same game, but it's slightly different physiology, which is going to be really interesting, really exciting. So.
Brilliant. This was absolutely superb, mate. Really, really appreciate you doing it. Just wrap us up with, where would you send people just to keep an eye on what you've got going on?
Twitter is probably where I kind of post or repost stuff. All my own views, of course. I'm not on Instagram or Facebook. You'll find me at coach_Roche_ on Twitter. Reach out there. I usually just share stuff that's of interest, really. Yeah, and thanks for having me on, and thanks to the listeners for tuning in. I know I was ranting a little bit there, but really, really excited to chat to anyone who wants to talk anything performance, strength and conditioning development.
Brilliant, mate. Well, thank you very much for your time, and all the best going into next season as well.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.